Man, here broke in Dr. Drummumup at the top of his voice, and with a thump that came near knocking the pulpit out our ears. Man that is born of a woman hath but a short time to live. He cometh up and is cut down like a flower. I started to the extremity of the pew, and perceived by the animated looks of the divine that the wrath which had nearly proved fatal to the pulpit had been excited by the whispers of the lady and myself. There was no help for it, so I submitted with a good grace, and listened in all the martyrdom of dignified silence to the balance of that very capital discourse. Next evening found me a somewhat late visitor at the Rantipole Theatre, where I felt sure of satisfying my curiosity at once by merely stepping into the box of those exquisite specimens of affability and omniscience, the Misses Arabella and Miranda Cognoscenti. That fine tragedian Climax was doing Iago to a very crowded house, and I experienced some little difficulty in making my wishes understood, especially as our box was next the slips, and completely overlooked the stage. "Smith," said Miss Arabella, as she at length comprehended the purport of my query. "Smith! Why, not General John A.B.C.?" "Smith," inquired Miranda, musingly, "God bless me, did you ever behold a finer figure?" "Never, madam. But do tell me, or so inimitable grace?" "Never, upon my word. But pray inform me, or so just an appreciation of stage effect, madam, or a more delicate sense of the true beauties of Shakespeare. Be so good as to look at that leg. The devil!" And I turned again to her sister. "Smith," said she, "why not General John A.B.C.? Horrid affair that, wasn't it? Great wretches, those bugaboos, savage and so on. But we live in a wonderfully inventive age. Smith, oh yes, great man, perfect desperado, immortal renown, prodigies of valor, never heard." This was given in a scream. "Bless my soul, why he's the man, Mandragora, nor all the drowsy syrups of the world shall ever medicine thee to that sweet sleep which thou odest yesterday." Here roared out Climax just in my ear, and shaking his fist in my face all the time, in a way that I couldn't stand, and I wouldn't. I left the Misses Cognoscenti immediately, went behind the scenes forthwith, and gave the beggarly scoundrel such a thrashing as I trust he will remember till the day of his death. At the soiree of the lovely widow, Mrs. Kathleen O'Trump, I was confident that I should meet with no similar disappointment. Accordingly, I was no sooner seated at the card table, with my pretty hostess for a vis-a-vis, than I propounded those questions, the solution of which had become a matter so essential to my peace. "Smith," said my partner, "why not General John A.B.C.? Horrid affair that, wasn't it? Diamond, did you say? Terrible wretches, those kickapoos. We are playing whist, if you please, Mr. Tattle. However, this is the age of invention, most certainly the age, one may say, the age par excellence. Speak French? Oh, quite a hero. Perfect desperado. No hearts, Mr. Tattle? I don't believe it. Immortal renown and all that. Prodigies of valor. Never heard. Why, bless me, he's the man. Man! Captain Man!" here screamed some little feminine interloper from the farthest corner of the room. "Are you talking about Captain Man and the duel? Oh, I must hear. Do tell. Oh, go on, Mrs. O'Trump. Do go on. Do now go on." And again, and go on Mrs. O'Trump did, all about a certain Captain Man who was either shot or hung, or should have been both shot and hung. Yes, Mrs. O'Trump. She went on, and I went off. There was no chance of hearing anything further that evening in regard to Brevet Brigadier General John A.B.C. Smith. Still I consoled myself with the reflection that the tide of ill luck would not run against me forever, and so determined to make a bold push for information at the rout of that bewitching little angel, the graceful Mrs. Pirouette. "Smith," said Mrs. P., as we twirled about together in a pas de zephyr. "Smith, why not General John A.B.C.? Dreadful business, that of the bugaboos, wasn't it? Dreadful creatures, those Indians. Do turn out your toes. I am I really am ashamed of you, man of great courage, poor fellow. But this is a wonderful age for invention. Oh, dear me, I'm out of breath. Quite a desperado. Prodigies of valor never heard. Can't believe it. I shall have to sit down and enlighten you. Smith! Why, he's the man. Man Fred, I tell you. Here bawled out Miss Barbleu, as I led Mrs. Pirouette to a seat. Did ever anybody hear the like? It's Man Fred, I say, and not at all by any means Man Friday. Here Miss Barbleu beckoned to me in a very peremptory manner, and I was obliged, will I nil I, to leave Mrs. P. for the purpose of deciding a dispute touching the title of a certain poetical drama of Lord Byron's, although I pronounced with great promptness that the true title was Man Friday, and not by any means Man Fred. Yet when I returned to seek Mrs. Pirouette, she was not to be discovered, and I made my retreat from the house in a very bitter spirit of animosity against the whole race of the Barbleu. Matters had now assumed a really serious aspect, and I resolved to call at once upon my particular friend, Mr. Theodore Sinevate, for I knew that here at least I should get something like definite information. Smith, said he, in his well-known peculiar way of drawling out his syllables, Smith. Why, not General John A.B.C. Savage affair with the Kickapoos, wasn't it? Say, don't you think so? Perfect desperado. Great pity, upon my honor. Wonderfully inventive age. Prodigies of valor. By the by, did you ever hear about Captain Man? Captain Man be damned, said I. Please to go on with your story. Hem. Oh, well, quite la même chose, as we say in France, Smith, eh? Brigadier General John A.B.C., I say. Here Mr. S. thought proper to put his finger to the side of his nose. I say, you don't mean to insinuate now, really and truly and conscientiously, that you don't know all about that affair of Smith's as well as I do, eh, Smith, John A.B.C.? Why, bless me, he's the man. Mr. Sinevate, I said imploringly. Is he the man in the mask? No, said he, looking wise, nor the man in the moon. This reply I considered a pointed and positive insult, and so left the house at once in high dudgeon, with a firm resolve to call my friend Mr. Sinevate to a speedy account for his ungentlemanly conduct and ill-breeding. In the meantime, however, I had no notion of being thwarted touching the information I desired. There was one resource left me yet. I would go to the fountainhead. I would call forthwith upon the general himself and demand in explicit terms a solution of this abominable piece of mystery. Here, at least, there should be no chance for equivocation. I would be plain, positive, peremptory, as short as pie crust, as concise as Tacitus or Montesquieu. It was early when I called, and the general was dressing, but I pleaded urgent business, and was shown at once into his bedroom by an old negro valet, who remained in attendance during my visit. As I entered the chamber, I looked about, of course, for the occupant, but did not immediately perceive him. There was a large and exceedingly odd-looking bundle of something, which lay close by at my feet on the floor, and as I was not in the best humor in the world, I gave it a kick out of the way. Hem, ahem. Rather civil that, I should say, said the bundle, in one of the smallest and altogether the funniest little voices, between a squeak and a whistle, that I ever heard in all my days of existence. Ahem, rather civil that, I should observe. I fairly shouted with terror, and made off, at a tangent, into the farthest extremity of the room. God bless me, my dear fellow. Here again whistled the bundle. What? Why? What is the matter? I really believe you don't know me at all. What could I say to all this? What could I? I staggered into an armchair, and, with staring eyes and open mouth, awaited the solution of the wonder. Strange you shouldn't show me, though, isn't it? Strange you shouldn't know me, though, isn't it? Presently re-squeaked the nondescript, which I now perceived was performing upon the floor some inexplicable evolution very analogous to the drawing of a stocking. Here was only a single leg, however, apparent. Strange you shouldn't know me, though, isn't it, Pompey? Bring me that leg. Here Pompey handed the bundle a very capital cork leg, already dressed, which it screwed on in a trice, and then it stood up before my eyes. And a bloody action it was, continued the thing, as if in a soliloquy, but then one mustn't fight with the bugaboos and kickapoos, and think of coming off with a mere scratch, Pompey. I'll thank you now for that arm, Thomas, turning to me, is decidedly the best hand at a cork leg, but if you should ever want an arm, my dear fellow, you must really let me recommend you to Bishop. Here Pompey screwed on an arm. We had rather hot work of it, that you may say, now you dog slip on my shoulders and bosom. Petite makes the best shoulders, but for a bosom you will have to go to Ducrot. Bosom, said I. Pompey, will you never be ready with that wig? Scalping is a rough process after all, but then you can procure such a capital scratch at Delorme's. Scratch? Now, you man, my teeth. For a good set of these, you had better go to Parmley's at once. High prices, but excellent work. I swallowed some very capital articles, though, when the big bugaboo rammed me down with the butt end of his rifle. Butt end? Rammed down? My eye! Oh, yes, by the by, my eye. Here, Pompey, you scamp, screw it in. Those kickapoos are not so very slow at a gouge, but he's a belied man, that Dr. Williams, after all. You can't imagine how well I see with the eyes of his make. I now began very clearly to perceive that the object before me was nothing more nor less than my new acquaintance, Brevet Brigadier General John A.B.C. Smith. The manipulations of Pompey had made, I must confess, a very striking difference in the personal appearance of the man. The voice, however, still puzzled me no little, but even this apparent mystery was speedily cleared up. Pompey, you rascal, squeaked the general, I really do believe you would let me go out without my pallet. Hereupon the man, grumbling out an apology, went up to his master, opened his mouth, and with the knowing air of a horse jockey, and adjusted therein a somewhat singular-looking machine in a very dexterous manner, that I could not altogether comprehend. The alteration, however, in the entire expression of the general's countenance was instantaneous and surprising. When he again spoke, his voice had resumed all that rich melody and strength which I had noticed upon our original introduction. Damn the vagabonds, said he, in so clear a tone that I positively started at the change. Damn the vagabonds! They not only knocked in the roof of my mouth, but took the trouble to cut off at least 7/8 of my tongue. There isn't Bonfanti's equal, however, in America, for really good articles of this description. I can recommend you to him with confidence. Here the general bowed, and assure you that I have the greatest pleasure in doing so. I acknowledged his kindness in my best manner, and took leave of him at once, with a perfect understanding of the true state of affairs, with a full comprehension of the mystery which had troubled me so long. It was evident. It was a clear case. Brevet Brigadier General John A.B.C. Smith was the man that was used up.